Her name was Viola Thorne, and she was the Dominion Pact's most fearsome diplomatic enforcer. Not just an ambassador, an apex predator in heels and fur. Her violet pelt shimmered like starlight under the docking bay's luminescence as she stalked down the arrival corridor of Station Orinox, her clawed heels clicking a tempo of disdain. A half-dozen aides scrambled to keep pace behind her. One, a trembling human protocol drone named Merrick, hovered anxiously beside her shoulder. "Ambassador Thorne," he croaked, voice trembling through synthetic cords. "Station security requests your compliance with threat Turscan protocols before you proceed to the High Council chamber." Viola didn't break stride. Her tails swished behind her in a measured wave, each movement a study in contained lethality. "I don't take requests from humans," she said. "Tell your superiors I'll address their security concerns after the Interlink Summit." "They, insisted," Merrick said, voice shrinking. "It's recent threat protocol, mandatory after the Vulcan incident." She turned a corner. And stopped. A tall man in dark gray command armor stood at the security gate, arms crossed over a chest that looked carved from rebellion. A badge at his shoulder marked him as head of station enforcement. He didn't flinch as she approached. "Ambassador Viola Thorne," he said. "Commander Rian Calder, Station Chief of Security. This won't take long." She looked him up and down like he was dirt that dared speak. "A human is head of security here?" Her voice stripped ice. "Did you win that in a card game?" He didn't blink. "Nope. Passed the background check. Even the psychoanalytic one." She narrowed her eyes. "Doubtful. Try me. Step through the gate unless you're worried it might find the spike in your ego." A slow smirk crept across her lips. No one had spoken to her like that in years. She said nothing. Just stepped through the gate, tails swaying like whips. The scanner beeped. Rian stepped forward with the tablet. "Clear," he said. "But let me be perfectly straight with you, Ambassador. You might outrank most people on this station, but in a live threat zone, you don't outrank me." She stepped closer, nose inches from his. Her voice dropped to a purr laced with venom. "You forget, Commander. I don't take orders. I issue them." "Then sit back and enjoy the show, Your Grace," he said, smirking. "Just don't get in my way." The Interlink Summit Chamber was a grand amphitheater, layered in arcs of shimmering alloy and diplomat status tiers. Viola's seat had always been at the outer ring, symbolic of neutrality, superiority, distance. But today, the arrangement had shifted. "Ambassador," said an aide, breathless as he jogged to catch her at the corridor's end. "Your seating has been adjusted. Table 1, central tier." Viola's ears flicked once in irritation. Adjusted without her consent? Table 1 stood elevated, bathed in soft starlight filters, overlooking every other delegation. She made her way up the steps, ignoring every whisper and glance aimed at her violet-furred silhouette. And then she saw it. Her nameplate. Dead center. And next to it, Rian Calder. "Ambassador," he said, tone neutral but eyes gleaming. "You're in my seat." "No," he corrected with a calm smile. "I'm in mine. Yours is right there." He gestured to the polished chair beside him. "Apparently no one else wanted to sit this close. Said you bite?" She lowered herself with slow, deliberate grace. Her every movement was a blade polished for performance. She didn't look at him when she spoke. "Enjoy this. It'll be the last time you ever sit beside me." "Planning to have me exiled already?" he replied smoothly. "Should I start packing?" She didn't answer. The summit commenced with predictable spectacle, grand speeches, subtext-laden alliances, carefully veiled threats. But even as Viola engaged in ritual nods and perfunctory smiles, her mind wandered. Back to the infuriating man beside her. Rian Calder. Human. Audacious. And dangerous in ways she hadn't accounted for. When the session finally ended, she rose with the others and stepped toward the Atrian envoy. She barely registered the way Rian slid into her seat behind her. She returned to sit without looking. And landed directly in his lap. The impact sucked the breath from her lungs. The entire chamber fell into dead silence. Dozens of eyes turned. His arms remained politely distant. His voice, however, was low and utterly unforgivable. "Comfortable?" She didn't answer. "I warned you," he said. "That seat comes with consequences." Her ears twitched. Her jaw locked. She stood abruptly, knocking her datapad to the floor. She didn't stoop to pick it up. He did, handing it back with maddening grace. Not a word. Just a ghost of a smirk. Then he walked away, leaving her alone in the center of the summit table, humiliated. And watched. Viola stormed into her diplomatic suite, the doors hissing closed behind her like a final insult. Her claws struck the steel wall with a thunderous clang. "Tovek!" she barked. Her aide, a wiry Zalari male with luminous eyes, stepped in from the adjoining room, data slate trembling in his hands. "Yes, Ambassador? Get me full access to internal surveillance archives and initiate a formal grievance against Chief Calder. I want him removed from station command before the sun's cycle ends." Tovek hesitated. "Speak," she growled. "The Human Council may resist, Ambassador. The incident technically wasn't an offense under interspecies code. And you're suggesting this was my fault? And no, Ambassador. Just politically ambiguous." She turned her back to him, crossing to the curved window that overlooked Oronux's spirelit skyline. Her fur bristled. Her skin still remembered the warmth of him, the way her balance had shifted the second her body met his. She clenched her jaw until it ached. This wasn't over. He would pay. But first, she needed to understand why a moment of humiliation had left her more breathless than 3 years of Dominion victory. Her console blinked. A message. Internal routing. From him. "If you're planning to assassinate me, wait until after tonight's security briefing. The Glavari delegation is skittish, and I'm the only one who speaks their dialect." She stared. Another ping. Also, the chair was very comfortable. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. Her tail whipped once. She exhaled sharply and turned away. He was mocking her. But part of her, traitorous, simmering, wasn't angry. It was intrigued. Later that cycle, the security operations chamber was already full when she arrived. Every seat was occupied, except one. The central one. Rian Calder's chair. She paused in the doorway. Every head turned. He entered seconds later through the opposite corridor, nodded curtly, and took his seat beside her. She didn't wait. She sat first. "Ambassador," he said. "Chief," she returned, matching his tone. The tension between them was thick enough to rip. He activated the room's holographic board. "There was an attempted breach last night," he said. "South Corridor, Tier 4. Failed entry via outdated maintenance shaft. AI intercepted the probe before full access. We believe it was a test." "From the Glavari?" one delegate asked. "Unlikely," he said. "More likely, the Unity Front." The room went cold. The rest of the meeting passed in clipped reports and stilted nods. When it finally adjourned, Viola stood. But Rian's voice stopped her. "That footage," she said quietly, "was supposed to be sealed." "I know." She turned ears sharp. "Then how did it leak?" He shrugged. "Someone wants you destabilized. Unsteady. Easier to manipulate. Sabotage? Politics." She studied him, unsure what unsettled her more, his calm, or how much he saw. "You're surprisingly good at this." "I told you," he said, walking away. "I don't just guard doors." "Then what do you guard, Calder?" He paused in the doorway, looked back. "You." The word echoed in her mind long after he'd left the chamber. "You." It lingered like smoke, uninvited, unwanted, but undeniably real. Viola Thorne didn't get guarded. She did the guarding. Of secrets. Of power. Of entire species. And yet, that night, she watched the footage again. The clip that had spread like wildfire through diplomatic circles. Her, untouchable Viola Thorne, seated in a human's lap, frozen mid-shock, his voice perfectly audible beneath the leaked audio filter. Comfortable? The bastard. Some witless enva had even overlaid soft jazz and a cartoon heart filter. It was now a diplomatic meme. She'd seen it shared in 6 languages, including an animated version broadcast on Proxinsat feeds. She snarled aloud, claws denting the edge of her console. Tovek stood near the wall, silent. Who did this? She demanded. We haven't isolated the source. Most likely internal. A delegate's personal device or. I want the feed traced and every copy purged from the station's net. Now. Yes, Ambassador. She turned toward the window again, tail lashing. The Dominion Council's response had been swift and surgical. Request for disciplinary action denied. Incident classified procedural misstep. No further comment necessary. In other words, bury it. Let the scandal rot in silence. Her comm pinged again. Another message. Same route. If you're planning to poison me tonight, let me know so I can at least bring wine. Calder. Her claws twitched. The worst part? She smirked. The bastard had charm. And nerve. Enough to walk into a firestorm and not flinch. Enough to talk to her like she wasn't a throne on legs, but a person. That was what made it dangerous. That was what made it addictive. Then the lights dimmed. Her console flashed red. High threat alert. Security breach detected. Tier 1 lockdown engaged. All diplomatic personnel are to report to protected sectors immediately. Seconds later, Tovek's voice cut in from her door console. Ambassador, we have to evacuate. Now. Security is en route to extract. No, she snapped. Divert them. Ambassador? Send them to the other ambassadors. I want Calder. Bring him to me. A pause. He's coordinating response from Sector Command. Then I'm going to him. By the time she reached Sector Command, Orinox had turned ghost silent. The spire's corridors were darkened, motion-triggered lights flickering to conserve power. Armed patrols glided like shadows through the quiet, rifles ready, orders whispered. She rounded a corner too fast and collided with something solid. Someone. 2 strong arms caught her. Rian Calder. What the hell are you doing here? He growled. Leading. She snapped, breath hot. Try it sometime. He didn't let go right away. His grip was firm but careful. You're supposed to be in a secure lockdown cell. I don't do protocol, Commander. He released her with a muttered curse. You just crash into live threat operations, unarmed, unescorted, and annoyed. She bared her teeth. Now you're catching on. He turned, motioning her to follow. The threat's real, Thorne. Someone jammed comms, bypassed the outer defense layer in 3 zones, and issued a forged evacuation order to draw the ambassadors out. She froze mid-step. A kill zone. She murmured. He nodded grimly. Exactly. Whoever's behind this wanted blood. Her pulse quickened. So what's your plan? He activated a portable holoboard, grids flickering with red alert points. You, he said flatly. Her head jerked toward him. Come again? You're the only person on this station who can bark a command and have 14 governments obey. He stepped closer. I need you to lock down every delegate in their quarters. Absolute compliance. No debate. No votes. Can you do that? She tilted her chin. I can do anything. He gave a short nod. Good. Because after that, you're not going anywhere. You're staying with me. Like hell I am. You're not bulletproof, Viola, he said, voice suddenly low. And until I know who's trying to kill you, I want you under my eye. The next hour felt like war. Viola's voice sliced through the emergency comm channels with icy authority. This is Ambassador Viola Thorne. All interspecies representatives are to remain in isolation quarters until further notice. Non-compliance will be interpreted as obstruction of an active investigation. This is your only warning." The response was instant. Doors sealed. Hatches locked. The ambassadors complied, some with protest, most with fear. Calder worked like a machine. His hands danced over a flickering hollowboard, rerouting squads, activating countermeasures, isolating compromised corridors. Then came the call. "Breach confirmed," barked a voice over internal comms. "Hallway 7B. Multiple heat signatures." Calder turned to Viola. "Let's go. I'm not staying behind." He didn't argue. He just handed her a compact plasma pistol from an emergency locker. "You ever fire one of these?" She activated the charge in a smooth flick of her clawed thumb. The core glowed violet. "You forget what Vulpine Dominion training looks like." He raised an eyebrow. "Then try not to shoot me." They moved. The corridor ahead shuddered with faint tremors. Lights flickered. Then came the sound, rapid boot falls, the crackle of visual dampers, the shriek of proximity alarms. Masked intruders surged out of the dark like wraiths. Viola ducked instinctively. A bolt of plasma skimmed over her head, searing a lock of her violet hair. Rian grabbed her wrist and yanked her behind a bulkhead. "Left flank!" he barked into his calm. 3 hostiles, grenade in 5. Sure enough, the thud came seconds later. The concussive blast shook the hallway, shattering light panels and rattling her lungs. When the smoke cleared, Rian moved first, fast, brutal. He tackled the figure into the wall and drove his elbow into the attacker's throat. A crunch followed. Viola rolled out from cover and fired low, clean. A leg shot. Another attacker screamed and fell. She pivoted. The last figure charged. She braced. But he was already down. Rian's boot pinned the masked head to the floor, eyes scanning for more. "Clear," he said, breathing hard. They stood surrounded by broken bodies and scorched bulkheads, the silence louder than the fight. Viola's tail flicked. "You fight dirty," she said, panting. "You love it," he replied. They stared at each other, adrenaline mixing with heat neither of them wanted to acknowledge. The station's internal security sealed the damaged corridor with a hydraulic hiss, isolating the wreckage behind blast doors. A containment field shimmered into place. Inside the command chamber, Rian peeled off his jacket. It hit the bench with a wet slap. Blood, sweat, grime all streaked across his shoulders. Viola stood across from him, fuming. "This wasn't random," she said. "They hit the ambassadorial wing directly. They knew the layout. They knew the override codes." "I know," he said quietly, stripping the last of the armor plates from his wrists. Her arms folded. Her violet fur, slick with heat and smoke, rippled with the rise of her breathing. "So, what happens now?" she asked. He looked up, unflinching. "We stop treating this like politics. We treat it like war. You're a dangerous man, Rian Calder." His voice dropped. "And you like that more than you should." Her eyes narrowed. "Careful, Commander. You're starting to sound like you care." "I do," he said. Just like that. No hesitation. 2 words, simple and final. Viola blinked. 2 cycles later, the station's banquet chamber sparkled with synthetic starlight. Orinox's Interspecies Council had pushed hard for the diplomatic gala, an urgent PR maneuver to show unity after the attack. Viola descended the spiral ramp in a silver-black gown, geometric slices across her hips and ribs, the fabric catching every glow panel like stardust on velvet. She was a vision of control. Of power. And he wasn't looking. She spotted Rian near the upper railing, dressed in crisp midnight gray formalwear, scanning the crowd like a hawk. His jaw was tight. Alert. Distant. She hated that he hadn't come to her. So she made sure he noticed her. Viola swept past stunned delegates, each offering bows, compliments, and sidelong stares. She circled the room slowly, letting the silence thicken around her. Then, a shadow stepped into her path. "Viola Thorne," purred a smooth, low voice. She looked up, and cursed inwardly. General Kairos Vel, Vulpine aristocrat, former mentor, and now Dominion watchdog in polished skin. Tall, sleek, eyes like frost. You look battle-worn and radiant, he said, lips curling. Still playing with fire, I see. I don't play, she said. I burn. He chuckled softly. Perhaps you'd enjoy my company for a moment. Remind these diplomats who truly understands you. She tilted her head, smiling sweetly. Lead the way. She didn't leave the chamber. She didn't need to. She just made sure Rian saw everything. The too soft whisper Kairos leaned in to deliver. The way her laugh trailed just a little too long. The brush of the general's fingers against the small of her back. She turned slightly, and caught Rian's eyes. He was already moving. Rian cut across the floor with predator calm. His movements were silent, but his presence cracked through the conversation like lightning splitting glass. Ambassador, he said evenly, arriving at her side. You're needed. Kairos blinked, affronted. She's in the middle of a private. Rian didn't even look at him. His hand closed gently but firmly around Viola's wrist. She allowed it. He guided her away from Kairos without another word, through the side entrance and into a darkened service corridor. The door sealed behind them, hissing like a hell breath. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, "Don't do that again," Rian said, voice quiet, but sharp as a blade. Her fur bristled. "Do what?" she replied, tone lined with frost. "Speak? Laugh? Exist? Use someone to get a reaction out of me?" She stepped close, breath hot. "Is that what you think I was doing? Testing you? Don't insult both of us, Viola." She smiled dangerously. "Maybe I wanted to see if you felt anything." He stepped in too, so close her chest nearly brushed his. "I feel everything," he said low. "Every time you walk into a room. Every time you breathe near me. You think you're the only one losing control?" Her mouth opened, but no words came. He didn't stop. "You want honesty?" he asked. "Here's your honesty." His hand came up, slow, deliberate, and cupped the side of her face. Her ears twitched at the heat of his palm. "I watch you weaponize beauty like a blade," he whispered. "And I let you, because I know underneath all of it, you're starving for someone who won't flinch when you're at your worst." Her voice cracked. "And what if I am? Then stop hiding behind the game." She stared at him, breath catching in her throat. Her claws curled at her sides. Her control teetered. "Why me?" she whispered. "You could have kept your distance. Played it safe." His forehead rested against hers, barely a brush. "Because you terrify me," he murmured. "And I've never wanted anything more." Their lips hovered, breathless. "Close." Then her comm chirped. "Security breach. Tier 1 alert. Device detonation detected. Sector C9. He stepped back with a curse, already activating his wrist console. "You're not off the hook," he said. "Neither are you," she breathed. Then, just like that, they were soldiers again, running toward another fire. Warning lights painted the corridor in pulsing red as Viola and Rian sprinted down the emergency path. Every door they passed locked behind them in sequence, sealing the station section by section. "Where's the epicenter?" Viola asked, breath short. "Central lift chamber," Rian said. "If we're fast, we can cut through before the security field seals." Boom! The explosion ripped through the corridor behind them like a tidal wave of fire and pressure. Viola was flung forward, slamming into the wall with a grunt. Rian crashed into the opposite bulkhead, but before she could gather herself, he lunged and tackled her through a side maintenance hatch just as the bulkhead slammed shut. Darkness. Then a low red flicker hummed to life. They were trapped. Viola groaned, brushing soot and ash from her muzzle, checking the burn on her arm. "Tell me," she growled. "That wasn't the only way out." Rian slammed a fist into the wall panel. Sparks flared. The override was dead. "I could lie," he muttered, She leaned back against the curved pod wall, claws twitching. Her fur stank of ozone. Perfect. The silence stretched too long. She hated it. She always hated silence. Say something, she snapped. He didn't look up. Like what? I don't know. Something to break the tension before I rip the panel out with my teeth. He finally looked at her. Is that your plan? He asked. Push me to the edge until something breaks. You're flattering yourself again, Commander. No. I'm done pretending. He leaned forward, slow and deliberate, every inch closing the space between them. I've been holding back, Viola. She swallowed. Every time you touched me. Every time you flaunted that rank or threw a jab to see if I'd flinch, I let you. Her tail flicked once. Her breathing was fast now, irregular. You think I need your permission? She whispered. No, he said. I think you need someone who sees you set fire to the room, and doesn't run. She stood abruptly, hands braced against the wall like she could climb out. This is insane. She spun on him, voice rising. I've spent my entire life becoming untouchable. Because if I let anyone close, I lose. He stood too, slower, taller. You think I don't know what that's like? His voice was low. Quiet. You think I haven't lived behind armor too? Her words caught in her throat. You're not the only one who's afraid, he said. You're just the only one still pretending not to be. I'm not afraid of you. Then what are you afraid of? She opened her mouth. Nothing came. His steps brought him right to her, barely an inch apart now. His breath hitched. She whispered, I'm afraid that you're the only one who's ever stood up to me. That you saw me. And didn't flinch. His hand cupped her face. The other pulled her into him. And then she kissed him. No more distance. No more silence. No more pretending. The kiss wasn't a brush or a question, it was war. Viola pulled him in like gravity, like she'd been holding her breath for 1,000 cycles and only now remembered how to exhale. Her claws tangled in the fabric of his shirt, anchoring herself against something real. Rian didn't hesitate, his hand at her waist, the other behind her neck, steadying the rush that broke between them like floodgates bursting open. She moaned softly into his mouth before pulling back, breathless. Her forehead rested against his, her tails flicking like storm winds behind her. The door hissed. Emergency response teams flooded the corridor beyond, armed, masked, shocked. Viola was still half pressed against him, and Rian's hand was still on her hip. They didn't move. The lead officer stared, slack-jawed. Situation contained? He asked. Viola stepped forward like nothing had happened, chin high, posture regal, voice ablade. Obviously. She walked out without a backward glance. But Rian knew her well enough now to recognize the tremor in her tail. 10 hours later, the station was chaos. The Dominion Council had received footage. Again. Only this time, there was no mean filter. No soft jazz. Just raw security cam footage of their ambassador, untouchable, icy, revered, wrapped around a human like she meant it. The fallout was nuclear. Viola's private comm overflowed with encrypted pings. Urgent directives. Demands. You have breached the neutrality clause. You must issue denial. Reaffirm political alignment. Distance yourself immediately from the human. It wasn't phrased as a request. It never was. She paced her suite like a caged animal, her fur bristling with fury and dread. They wanted her to retract it. To claim it was a trauma response. Or a momentary lapse under stress. Anything to preserve the mask. She stood at her window and watched the stars. And thought of Rian's hand wrapped around the back of her neck, steadying her when everything else cracked. She hadn't heard from him since the breach. He was giving her space. She hated that he knew her that well. Then her console chimed. One message. Whatever they're saying. I'm not going anywhere. I meant every second. Her claws curled tight against the edge of the table. She whispered. So did I. They summoned her by encrypted feed, 12 Dominion counselors in pale projection, flickering in the secure chamber like spectral gods. Vaila stood alone at the center of the circular room, her violet fur sleek, her posture carved from stone. Her tails were still, her eyes unreadable. Counselor Varen, the eldest, spoke first. Ambassador Thorn, you are aware of the directive issued last cycle. I am. You are also aware of the implications of your actions. I'm aware of the response to them, she said coolly. Another voice, Counselor Mary's, younger, sharper. You've compromised your diplomatic integrity. Your proximity to a human security chief constitutes a breach of interspecies neutrality. And what? Vaila said, her voice quiet. Do you want me to do? A pause. Public denial, Varen replied. You'll issue an official statement disavowing any emotional involvement with Commander Calder. You'll submit to reassignment and return to Dominion space within 48 hours. And if I refuse? You won't, said Counselor Drell. You've spent your life building this position. We know you. You don't throw that away. She inhaled slowly. Let it settle. And then she said the one word no one expected. No. Silence exploded across the chamber. Ambassador. Mary's began. I won't lie, she said. I won't recant. I won't reduce a real thing into a convenient political fiction just because you're afraid of what it means. You would risk your title, your legacy, for this? I've already risked it, she said, voice cold steel. And I don't regret it. Be careful. Varen warned. I've been careful my entire life. Vaila snapped. Every word I spoke. Every gesture I made. I've worn perfection like armor for decades, and not once, has it made me feel powerful. Silence again. She took a step forward. But when he looked at me, he didn't see a mask. He didn't see rank. He saw me. And for the first time, I felt seen. So if that's a crime. She took one more breath. Then judge me. Then she disconnected. Rian heard about it from a panicked comtech who wasn't supposed to be watching the feed. He stood motionless for a full minute. Then he turned and ran. Vaila met him at the threshold of her quarters before he could knock. You're here to ask if I'm sure? She said. No, he replied. You're going to try and talk me out of it? No. Then shut up, she whispered, pulling him inside. The door hissed shut behind them. And she kissed him like there was no more counsel to face. The news spread faster than any official dispatch. Dominion Ambassador Vaila Thorn had refused a direct order. She had kissed a human. She had not apologized. And she still hadn't backed down. By midday, 2 of the Dominion's allied systems had quietly suspended joint operations on Orinox. By evening, her security clearance was revoked. And by nightfall, someone tried to kill her. It was quiet, almost elegant. A glass of Vulpine elder wine, her favorite, brewed from starlace petals found only in the upper Scar colonies. Delivered by a silver-plated service drone. Harmless. Except it wasn't. If Rian hadn't rerouted the drink through the biometric scanner first. He collapsed before she could take the first sip. The medbay lights were white. Too white. Vaila sat beside the containment pod, her face smudged with panic and ash. The physicians gave her a wide berth. They knew better than to speak. If he died, she would level the station with her bare hands. The antidote was slow. His vitals were stable now, but every reading was jagged. Unpredictable. The toxin had been engineered with care. It didn't kill fast. It killed quietly. Vaila hadn't even realized she was crying until her aide, Tovek, handed her a cloth. Ambassador. She turned eyes lethal. Leave. He left. She remained unmoving. Then, slowly, she reached out and took Rian's hand between both of hers. Don't you dare leave me, she whispered, pressing her forehead to his fingers. You don't get to take the fall for my war. His hand twitched. Her breath caught. She leaned closer, voice breaking. You said you were mine to protect? But I never told you. I need you more than I've ever needed anything. She didn't move for the rest of the night. She didn't speak again. Not until dawn. Rian stirred 3 hours before dawn. The medbay's lights dimmed automatically at the flicker of his vitals stabilizing. Vaila's ears twitched at the sound, half between instinct and prayer. He groaned softly, his voice rough. Why do I always wake up to you looking at me like I've done something stupid? She laughed, sudden, sharp, and broken halfway through. Because you have. He gave her a lopsided smile. Still here? I haven't left. Didn't think you would. He tried to sit. She stopped him with a palm to his chest. Don't, she said. You're still healing. I've survived worse. Her gaze stayed locked to his. You shouldn't have had to survive this. He looked at her for a long moment. The amusement in his expression faded, replaced by something quieter, steadier. It was never going to be easy, he said. Not with you. She almost flinched. But then, his voice dropped lower. But I'm done dancing around it. He sat up, ignoring the ache behind his eyes. She started to protest. He didn't let her. Vaila. Her name had never sounded like that before. Not political. Not formal. Just real. I need you to say it. She blinked. Say what? That this isn't just political fallout. That it's not just tension and war and damage control. That it's real. She turned her face away. He caught her wrist, not to trap her, but to hold her steady. You know it's real, she whispered. Why do you need to hear it? Because I've stood in front of guns for you, he said. But I won't stand in front of my own feelings unless I know you're standing beside me. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was breaking. He let go of her wrist. If you won't say it, he said softly, I'll walk. She stared at him. And then she moved. Climbed up into the narrow bed, curled into his side like her bones didn't understand solitude anymore. Her cheek pressed to his chest. Her claws gripped his shirt. I care. He exhaled. Say it like you mean it. Her voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. You want the truth? She lifted her face to his. I'm a disaster without you. I wake up thinking about you. I walk through fire to protect a title I don't even believe in anymore. But the second you're not in the room, I feel like I'm going to explode. She gritted her teeth. You make me insane, Rian. She met his eyes. I care so much it terrifies me. He kissed her. And when they broke apart, she was shaking. You win, she whispered. I don't want to win, he said. I just want you. The Dominion didn't send veiled threats this time. No careful phrasing. No diplomatic language. The order came encoded in black priority script, flashing across Vaila's private comm system as she sat curled beside Rian, still wrapped in the quiet aftermath of truth. You are to report back to Dominion High Command within 24 hours. Failure to comply will result in immediate exile. You will be stripped of your title, your rank, your family inheritance. You will be declared a traitor. Permanent consequences will follow. Vaila read it 3 times. Her claws trembled once. Only once. Exile wasn't symbolic. It was annihilation. Her name would be erased from every Dominion registry. Her family, already fractured, would be forced to disavow her. She would lose access to Vulpine archives, ships, data, protection. She would be no one. They were counting on that fear to be stronger than anything else. But it wasn't. Not anymore. She didn't tell Rian right away. She needed to sit with it, to feel what it meant. Alone. She stood by the synthetic window in the medical suite, arms crossed, her fur lit in shades of violet and gold by the simulated sunrise outside. When Rian finally entered, still stiff but walking under his own power, she didn't turn. He saw her expression and knew. They gave the final order, he said. She nodded. When? Shuttle arrives in 2 hours. He crossed the room in 4 quiet steps. Are you going? She didn't answer. His voice dropped. Vaila. Don't walk out on this. It's not that simple. It is. She turned on him, frustration bubbling under the surface. If I don't go, I lose everything. No, he said. You lose them. Not everything. She spun away, running both hands through her hair. Her braid came undone, wild strands falling across her eyes. You don't understand what it means to be Vulpine. What I had to sacrifice just to exist in the Dominion. Every step I've taken has been up a ladder covered in knives. He didn't argue. He just stepped closer. Then let me be the first person who wants you, not your crest. Her breath hitched. She looked at him, and something inside her crumbled. Do you really think you can stand against the Dominion? She whispered. No, he said. But I'll stand between you and their shuttle anyway. She stared at him. And he didn't flinch. I love you? The words shattered her. She'd seen empires fall. Had signed orders that ended blockades and sentenced war criminals. But nothing ever unraveled her like that. Say it again, she whispered. He stepped close, cupped her face gently. I love you. She kissed him like it was the only thing keeping her from vanishing. Then she broke away, breathless. I have to do something, she said. Before he could stop her, she was gone. The Dominion shuttle loomed above the landing bay like a final judgment, sleek, silver, silent. Engines hummed with eerie calm, casting faint heatwaves across the floor. Rian stood waiting, arms crossed, posture deceptively relaxed. He wore his command jacket open over his undersuit, still bandaged, still bruised. He hadn't brought a weapon. He didn't need one. The ramp extended with a hydraulic hiss. 4 soldiers marched down first, full ceremonial armor, faces hidden beneath steel-masked helms. Between them strode a high-ranking retrieval officer. Smooth and pale, his eyes the cold yellow of unblinking surveillance. We are here for Vaila Thorne, he said. She will come with us. She's not going anywhere, Rian replied, calm as glass. The officer's lip curled. You have no authority to interfere. Nope, Rian said, cracking his neck. Just a broken rib, a high pain threshold, and no patience. The guard stepped forward. Rian didn't move. Not an inch. Then she appeared. Vaila walked through the open bay doors in silence. The light caught her fur, purple streaked with silver ash. Her long coat swayed behind her like a banner of rebellion. She moved like thunder on silk. She passed Rian without looking at him, yet his presence braced her spine. The officer's expression shifted. Ambassador Thorne. I am no longer Ambassador Thorne, she said. He froze. You relinquish your title? She stopped in front of him. I return it. She pulled the Dominion crest from her chest, polished, razor-edged, gleaming with old power, and placed it into his outstretched hand. His fingers closed around it as if afraid to drop it. Are you aware of what this means? He asked. I am. You would cast aside everything you've earned? Everything you are? She turned slowly toward Rian, who stood like a mountain behind her, unmoved by the winds. I'm not casting it away, she said clearly. I'm trading it. For what? She stepped to Rian, took his hand, laced her claws through his fingers. For something real. The entire hangar went still. The retrieval officer's face hardened. You understand this act makes you an exile. A traitor. Vaila didn't flinch. Then go. He took one stunned step back. You're dismissed. He hesitated, but even the soldiers behind him faltered. The door ramp hissed shut with indignation. The shuttle rose with mechanical precision and vanished into the station's upper levels. Silence. Then murmurs. Then chaos. But none of it touched her. Vaila stood in the center of the landing bay, holding Rian's hand, no longer a symbol of the Dominion, but something far more dangerous. A woman who chose. You just burned down the galaxy for me, he murmured. She smiled, something wild and free. No, she said, stepping closer, pressing her body to his. I burned it down with you. The shuttle was gone. The hangar was empty. But Viola still stood tall beside Rian, the heat of her decision still clinging to her skin like the afterglow of war. She hadn't just stepped away from a legacy, she had obliterated it. They didn't speak as they walked the long, quiet corridor back to his quarters. She said nothing as the automatic door hissed open, revealing the modest space that had become more familiar than her own suite. No velvet couches. No Dominion-grade fixtures. Just steel and silence, and him. He watched her. She stood in the center of the room like she didn't know how to breathe anymore. Her tail swayed, restless. You can sit, he said gently. I don't sit, she replied, arms folded tightly across her chest. I plan. I pivot. I posture. You used to, he corrected. You used to sit in my chair? She turned slowly, eyes narrowing. That was a power move. He stepped toward her, slow and deliberate. So is this. He sat down in that same damn armchair, the one at the command ring, the one she had once accidentally dropped herself into, and spread his knees slightly, holding out his hand. Then prove it. She didn't hesitate. Viola crossed the room and slid into his lap with all the slow control of someone walking into her own gravity well. Her legs curled across his thigh. Her arms looped around his neck. Her heart pounded against his chest. You're still wounded, she said. He kissed the corner of her jaw. You're still dangerous. Their eyes locked. Still comfortable? He murmured. Her lips curled into something more primal than a smile. Shut up and kiss me, human! He did. But this time, the kiss wasn't built on tension. It wasn't to break a silence or end an argument. This time it was soft. Grounded. Real. Her claws found the back of his neck, tracing lines down to his spine. His hands splayed against her hips, holding her like he didn't believe she'd really chosen him until now. Her body pressed into his, their rhythm slow, sinking, not a collision but a convergence. It wasn't about dominance or control anymore. It was about trust. When the kiss finally broke, their foreheads rested together. Her eyes fluttered closed, her fur rising and falling with every breath. You know I still might be hunted, she whispered. I'll be right beside you, he said. They'll revoke my access to Dominion intelligence. I'll lose everything I built. You can use mine. She leaned back just enough to meet his eyes. I have nothing left. You have me. That, more than any kiss, any defiance, any war, unraveled her. She didn't respond. She just curled against his chest and let herself stay there. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was falling. She felt like she'd finally landed. 3 weeks passed. The galaxy didn't stop spinning, but it staggered. The Dominion scrambled to contain the breach. They tried silence first, burying Viola Thorne's name beneath redacted logs and sealed archives. But whispers are faster than protocols, and truth always finds cracks to bleed through. The story became legend. The exiled Vulpine ambassador who defied the Council. The human security chief who caught her fall. And the kiss that shattered 3 diplomatic coalitions in a single breath. No one said her name aloud anymore. Not officially. But in every corridor of Station Orinox, in every ambassadorial lounge, in every war room where alliances were debated, she was there. Like a ghost in the vents. Like perfume that refused to fade. And Joseph Rian Calder? He stayed by her side. Viola moved into his quarters, not out of necessity, but by instinct. She didn't unpack. She simply remained. Her presence filled the room, made it feel less like a holding cell and more like a storm shelter. I hate your mirror, she complained one morning, brushing her fur back from her muzzle. It's functional. It's scratched. So are you. He grinned. She rolled her eyes, and never stopped using it. She swore often. Cooked badly. Ripped the air filtration system apart twice just to feel useful. He let her. He kissed her when she got sarcastic. She kissed him harder when he was right. They were a mess. But the kind that made you stronger. One night, during a quiet cycle where no one tried to kill them, she found him sitting on the bed, half-dressed, staring at a glowing data tablet in his lap. She knew that screen. Knew that footage. The lift pod. The kiss. The one that ruined everything. And saved something bigger. "Why are you watching that?" she asked quietly. He didn't turn. "Because it's the moment you stopped pretending." She walked across the room, slipped the tablet from his fingers, and set it aside. Then she curled into his lap like she had the first time. "I wasn't pretending," she whispered into his neck. "I was surviving." He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. "I know." Her breath slowed. Then she pulled back, looked into his eyes. "What are we doing now, Rian?" He didn't hesitate. "We're building something no one else gets to tear down." The next message came encoded in Dominion cipher. It arrived on an unlisted channel, buried beneath layers of outdated diplomatic protocols and hidden ID keys. Tovek found it first and forwarded it to her with a single word attached: caution. Vayla read the message in silence. "Your absence has created instability. Unforeseen gaps in strategy. We underestimated your value. You are missed." That was all. No apology. No offer of return. Just a half-admission cloaked in restrained diplomacy. The Dominion didn't miss people. They missed assets. Vayla knew this. But still, the message landed like a blade between her ribs. They were struggling without her. Good. She stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. A response sat just beneath her tongue, but she swallowed it. Instead, she reached for the delete key and tapped it once. The message vanished. She said nothing. But across the room, Rian looked up from the console and met her gaze. He didn't need to ask. In her silence, he understood. She was never going back. They fell into a rhythm that was quiet, strange, and entirely theirs. She took a post at the newly founded Intrices Academy on Orinox, teaching alien strategy to a generation of young diplomats and officers. The council tried to veto her involvement. The council lost. They didn't give her a title. She didn't want one. Rian returned to training recruits in advanced threat response, humans, Vulpines, even Proxen insurgents with half a dozen claws and no concept of safety. He didn't speak about the past. But wordlessly, people began to follow him. They were no longer scandal. They were legend. The only two people in a galaxy of rules who had dared to break the most sacred one, do not feel. And they did. Every day. One evening, under the simulated dusk of Orinox's upper dome, Rian found her on the balcony wrapped in one of his worn jackets, sipping tea like she hadn't once held the fate of empires in her claws. He slid his arms around her waist from behind and kissed the curve of her neck. "What are you thinking?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "That I was born to command. Taught to conquer. Raised to win." She turned in his arms, touched her forehead to his. "And somehow, I never felt powerful until I let someone love me." His throat tightened. He kissed her without speaking. Because there was nothing left to prove. Orinox was quiet, but the galaxy wasn't. Beyond its outer rings, a tremor stirred in the null sectors. It wasn't Dominion. It wasn't Proxen. It was something older. Colder. A fleet had gone missing near the Karn Drift. No distress signal. No debris. Just silence. At first, the council blamed pirates. Then sabotage. Then internal failures. But Vayla knew better. The Dominion didn't send out warnings. But she still had friends in forgotten corners. Operatives who owed her everything, informants too stubborn to recant their allegiance. And they were scared. The name appeared in fractured code transmissions, distorted audio files, ghost logs scrawled into obsolete channels. Nexus Verge. An ancient species. Long thought dormant. Not extinct. Dormant. They had watched while the galaxy built its treaties and trampled over the bones of old wars. And now, the Verge were waking. Viola studied the signals for hours. She didn't sleep. She cross-referenced ancient Dominion files long since purged from public access. Symbols carved into derelict architecture. Power signatures buried beneath fake starfields. Every line pointed toward the same truth. Something was coming. And it wouldn't care about titles or forbidden love. It would burn through both. She didn't tell Rian immediately. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she didn't want to see that look in his eyes. The one he always wore when a new war tried to steal what they had built. But he already knew. She found him at the outer observatory, staring at the star map, hands resting on the console like he could hold the galaxy still with just the weight of his fingers. "You saw the Verge files," she said. He didn't look away. "Yeah. They're not testing borders. They're mapping weaknesses." "I know." Her fur bristled at the base of her neck. "Then we need to prepare. Orinox isn't ready. The Council isn't ready. The Dominion's too fractured to see it coming." He finally looked at her. "I'm not letting them touch you. You think this is about me? It always is." She stepped closer. His voice dropped. "I already gave up everything to keep you safe. I'll do it again if I have to." She didn't answer. Not with words. She reached up, rested her claws against his jaw, and kissed him, fierce and brief. "We don't survive this by protecting each other," she murmured. "We survive this by standing together." He pulled her in, arms around her waist. "I was hoping you'd say that." They stood there, in the quiet curve of glass and stars, holding on to the last moment before the storm. The first attack wasn't military. It was digital. Orinox's southern satellite array blinked offline for 6 seconds. Just 6. But in those 6 seconds, a classified ship registry was erased, 3 black site coordinates were exposed, and 5 encrypted data cores were quietly corrupted. No alarms. No fire. Just silence and loss. Rian was the first to notice. He stood frozen in the command hub, watching the playback on a loop. The footage didn't make sense. No breach, no spike, no visible tampering. "It was an override command," he said to the room. "Written in pre-Dominion code." Only Viola recognized it. "Nexus Verge," she whispered. The station's newly appointed council didn't take her warning seriously. A few nodded politely. Most ignored her. One even laughed. "That species is myth, Ambassador Thorne. Scare stories for fringe diplomats." "I am not an ambassador anymore," she said, tail lashing. "Exactly," the delegate replied. "Which is why you should let qualified leadership handle this." Rian took a step forward before she caught his arm. "Don't," she whispered. "Not here. Not yet." Later that night, in the darkness of their shared quarters, he paced the floor like a caged wolf. "They don't listen." "They will," she said, reclining in the curve of the window seat, her violet fur reflecting the artificial starlight outside. He turned to her. "How can you be calm?" "I'm not." "Then why do you look like you're waiting for something?" She met his eyes. "Because I am." And then, like a script written by fate, the station alarm screamed. Intrusion detected. Outer Sector Airlock B3. They moved instantly. Rian snapped on his sidearm. Viola slipped into her lightweight armored weave, claws flexing. The scene at the airlock was chaos. The corridor lights had gone black. The manual override was shredded. A single figure stood just inside the breach zone, tall, armored, humming with something ancient and wrong. It wasn't a species they knew. But its eyes locked on Viola the moment she entered. And it spoke. "You are the fallen crest," it said. Its voice was static laced with frost. She stepped forward undaunted. "You first." Then it raised its hand and fired a round of pale kinetic energy that split the wall beside her like paper. Rian dragged her down, both of them rolling behind the nearest blast door frame. The wall where she'd stood was gone. She panted. "That wasn't a warning shot." "No," Rian said grimly. "That was a message." They came fast after that. 2 more intruders, cloaked in the same tech? No insignia. No language. Just efficient, brutal intent. And they were all focused on her. Because she had no crest now. No protection. Only him. The firefight tore through Sector B3 like a ruptured artery. Rian moved with ruthless precision. 2 shots center mass, 1 to the head. But the Verge didn't drop like normal enemies. They absorbed. Adapted. Shifted. Viola ducked under a collapsing ceiling panel, firing short plasma bursts that only seemed to stagger the lead intruder. The smell of melting alloy and ozone burned her nostrils. "Fall back!" Rian yelled, grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the secondary blast door. She resisted, only for a second, but followed. As they slammed through, he manually triggered the bulkhead. The wall hissed shut behind them. The door lit red. Then the Verge started cutting through. They didn't use torches. They used silence. The metal warped under some kind of directed frequency, like the sound was being peeled off the walls. "Move!" Rian growled. They sprinted down the emergency corridor, weaving through steam and shadows, heartbeats loud in their ears. Viola's claws scraped the wall for balance. Every motion was raw instinct. By the time they reached Command Subdeck D, reinforcements had arrived, station guards still green, still shaken. The moment Viola stepped through, every eye locked on her. Because the attackers hadn't said Dominion. They'd said Fallen Crest. A choice now branded to her skin. "Why are they targeting you?" Rian asked, breath still ragged. "I don't know," she lied. He stared at her. "Viola, I said I don't know." But she did. Or at least, she suspected. She opened her personal encrypted archive, the one only 3 people in the galaxy had ever accessed. The last time she touched it was just before her exile. She ran a query. Project Shardfire. And there it was. Buried under Dominion myth, sealed under 8 security keys, a forgotten file stamped with her old ambassadorial sigil. She opened it. And her blood went cold. The Verge hadn't returned by chance. They had been waiting. The file described an ancient Vulpine artifact, unearthed decades ago in a Dominion research outpost Viola herself had commissioned, an obelisk of metal and memory, humming with power no Dominion scientist could explain. It had responded to her DNA. Only hers. She had shut the project down. Buried it. The Verge hadn't forgotten. And now, she understood. They weren't after the Dominion. They weren't after Orinox. They were after her. Because she was the key. Viola sat in the dark of their quarters, hunched over the console, the flickering light of the Shardfire file casting eerie reflections in her violet eyes. Her claws trembled, hovering above the data field. She heard the door hiss open behind her. Rian didn't say a word. He just stood there, watching her. She didn't look up. "You were right." "About what?" "I knew." He stayed quiet. Let her unravel it on her own. 5 years ago, I authorized a covert excavation in the Furin Fringe. Dominion intelligence flagged an anomaly buried in a collapsed Verge ruin. No known language. No readable signal. But it pulsed. She leaned back in the chair. They brought it to the Concord Spire. Locked it in Black Site 7. I was supposed to oversee analysis, keep it quiet. But the first time I touched it, it reacted. Not to the scanners. Not to the drones. Just to me. She turned to him finally. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It knew me. Rian crossed the room and sat beside her. And you buried it. I buried everything. The site. The project. The reports. I told myself it was just Dominion arrogance. That we had no business unlocking what didn't belong to us. But the Verge. They weren't dormant. They were waiting. And I triggered them. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Because I didn't want it to be real. Because if I was the reason. He reached over, covered her hand with his. You're not the reason. You're the target. And now that we know, we fight smart. She stared at him. Even after everything? Especially after everything. Silence stretched between them. This one wasn't cruel like before. It was laced with understanding. Then the comm pinged. Alert! Unidentified object entering Orionox airspace. Trajectory, direct descent. No IFF signature. Impact in 42 seconds. Rian stood instantly. Get your evac gear. Viola didn't move. No, she said. What? We don't run. He stared at her. This isn't posturing, she said. This is a message. They're not trying to kill me. Not yet. They're testing me. If I leave now, they'll chase us planet to planet, station to station. But if I stay, they might show their hand. That's a hell of a gamble. She turned toward him, fierce and certain. Then stack the odds. If they want me, I want them close. I want their names. Their voice prints. Their biology. Every trace. Rian gave a low, humorless laugh. You're terrifying when you talk like that. She grabbed her sidearm. Checked the charge. Clipped it to her belt. Then stay close, Chief. You're the only thing between me and my worst ideas. He kissed her before she could say another word. Then he said, Let's make them regret ever waking up. The object that pierced Orionox's upper atmosphere didn't detonate. It unfolded. A Verge vessel, if it could be called that, drifted in on silent propulsion, shaped like a tear in space itself. No engines. No weapons. Just void-colored metal that drank in light and returned only reflections that made no sense. It docked at Auxiliary Base 6. Waited. No message. No demands. Just presence. Viola stood at the loading bay threshold, flanked by station security, but she'd already waved them off. This was between her and the storm. The vessel opened like a wound. And something stepped out. Not Verge, not entirely. Humanoid but tall, draped in cloth that shimmered like dust in zero-G. Its face was covered in a mask of shifting runes that flickered in sync with Viola's heart. It spoke without sound. Straight into her mind. You touched the shard. She didn't flinch. I buried it. You awakened us. I didn't want to. Intent is irrelevant. You are the threadbearer. The last echo of the voice that bound our kind in silence. You are what remains. Rian reached for his sidearm. The being turned to him. Spoke aloud this time. You are the fracture. He stepped forward. She's not yours. No, it said, looking back at Viola. She never was. And then it bowed. To the uncrested. To the broken made whole. To the danger the Dominion feared most, a woman who chose her own name. It left something at her feet, a crystal the color of bone and lightning. When you're ready to know the truth of what you were built to forget, break it. Then it vanished. Just gone. No light. No sound. Just absence. Viola stared at the crystal. Rian stood beside her. Are you going to? He asked. Not yet. He reached down, took her hand. Then let's go home. 3 months later. The galaxy had changed. No more titles. No more commands. Just 2 people living with fire in their blood and a war on the horizon. Viola taught strategy in shadows now. Rian trained the soldiers no one wanted to admit existed. The crystals sat in a sealed box at the back of a drawer. Waiting. And some nights, when the lights were low and the wind from the vent system sounded too much like whispering, Viola would open that drawer, run her clawed fingers over the box, and whisper to herself, I'm not afraid anymore. Then she'd turn, crawl into bed beside him, and fall asleep in the arms of the only man who never tried to cage her. Not because the storm was over, but because now she was the storm.